Hello fellow humans! It's been a while since my last video, but now it's finally time to break the streak due to the release of another epic JRPG. Yup, Chef Atlas does it again. Over the past 2 weeks, I've been very much enjoying Atlas's newest game, Metaphor re Fantazio. And as of making this video, I have a bit over 100 hours in the game and am now playing on New Game Plus. It took me around 80 plus hours or so to beat the game on hard on my first playthrough, just in case anyone was wondering. Given the time I've spent on this game, let's just say I've done a bit of experimenting, and so I thought this would also be a good opportunity to showcase in this somewhat of a guide some of the builds that are quite literally busted. No, like seriously busted. But before we get into any of that, just going to give a quick spoiler reminder since I will be showcasing many of the builds against some of the very late game bosses. You have been warned. That said, and without further ado, here are some of the strongest endgame builds in Metaphor re Fantazio.
Down! Right? They have to be! Right?
Get out!
Fantazio took them down!
I shall vanquish evil!
Anyone else wanna try it?
Let's wrap this up!
Only one left! Finish them off and we're clear!
Counting on you!
Let's do this!
The magic seeds!
Might as well put some effort in this. Take my power! Better work!
Let's do this!
I shall put all on the line! Shiva! Vishnu! Thor!
Damn it! Not again! Lord Louise!
Let my power support you! You will taste justice!
I do not fear death. And yet... Let me help!
Let's do this!
My world!
So, as you guys just witnessed, the strongest builds in the game pretty much rely on stacking passives that have the same archetype lineage bonus, which can in turn lead to us dealing absurdly high amounts of damage. This unfortunately also leads to less diverse team compositions if you want to set up for those big one-shot attacks, since ideally you'd want 4 members with the same archetype lineage in your party. Hands down and by far the best archetype that abuses this mechanic is the Merchant, which later on turns into the Tycoon. This is because this archetype has the innate critical trade passive and Gold Rush for pretty much guaranteed crits. This archetype together with the Prince archetype are unlocked very late in the game, and rightfully so since these two are probably the most broken archetypes for dealing damage, with the Tycoon being just a bit better in terms of consistency. On top of this, the Prince also doesn't seem to benefit from the same archetype lineage bonus. However, despite this fact, the Prince is still able to dish out insane damage while having an extremely diverse skill set as well. Now, in order to achieve the highest damage output, we'd want these passives. The first is Heat Up, which is learned from the Warrior archetype. This gives a percentage buff on all physical damage depending on the number of archetypes with the same lineage. From this, we can get up to a 30% bonus on physical damage. For magic damage dealers, on the other hand, we simply replace the skill for Magic Circle from the Mage archetype, which is just the magic damage counterpart of this passive. Next is Sense of Kinship, which is inherited from the Berserker archetype. This passive functions the same as Heat Up and Magic Circle, but instead gives up to a 50% damage increase. Now this also applies to all types of damage. Next on the list is Revenge Seeker from the Destroyer archetype. This passive ability is an additive damage buff equal to the amount of HP missing in percent rounded up. This allows us to essentially have a double or 100% increase in damage if we're at 1 HP. This next one mainly applies to physical damage since for the last slot, we'd want Diligent Discipline learned from the Brawler, which at most gives us a 30% buff to crit rate. This one is pretty self-explanatory, but yeah, more crits equals more damage. Other notable passives are the boost skills like Slash Boost, Almighty Boost, and Magic Boost, which can easily be swapped in for any of these as well. Now, aside from this Tycoon build, these next archetypes are just some samples from the clips I used earlier. Firstly, for our MC, we have the Full Damage Prince, which mainly relies on Almighty Boost and Revenge Seeker. This build will most likely require you to abuse the retry feature to fish for that one-punch crit. This archetype really just makes all of the late-game human bosses look like clowns. We also have the Crit build, which slots in Diligent Discipline and Critical Trade for Sense of Kinship and Heat Up for more consistent crits. I'd say this is a good trade-off for crit rate since at the end of the day, we're just exchanging two slots that only give us a 20% increase in damage. For other physical damage dealers like the Royal Warrior, Royal Berserker, and Samurai, we'd want to go for any combination of Sense of Kinship, Revenge Seeker, Diligent Discipline, and for the last slot, either Critical Trade or Heat Up. On the other hand, I also had Juna and Yufa be my main magic damage dealers, mostly due to their natural high magic stats. Firstly, here's Juna, who I had on Elemental Master, where instead of having Diligent Discipline, since magic attacks can't crit, we generally want to slot in Magic Boost, Arcane Unity, or Almighty Boost. Next, here's Yufa on Devil Summoner, Soul Hacker, and Warlock, which generally follows the same build. Next, in terms of weapons, we're simply just going to want to equip whichever weapon you have with the highest attack rating, since this also seems to heavily affect skill damage calculations as well. There are a few exceptions, however, which is due to some weapons having special effects, like the Fortune God's Abacus, which is best in slot for Tycoons in terms of DPS. For gear, I almost always went with Runic Handguard, Wolf Greaves, or Berserk Gauntlets, which give us a passive auto Tarukaja. This, together with Formation of Vigor, will give us 3 stages of attack buff at the start of every fight. Lastly, for accessories, there are mainly 3 apart from the all-stat boosting ones that I've used throughout the game. The first and most broken one by far is the Gambler's Manual, which you can get by completing Gold 1 in the Ranked League at Brilhaven Coliseum. This item simply doubles our critical hit damage. Now, I don't think I need to explain how strong this item effect really is. For archetypes that don't utilize crits, we either use Overlord Sash, which boosts synthesis damage at the cost of more MP, or the Utilitarian's Manual, which reduces the cost of synthesis skills by 1. Both of these are acquired from the Magic Shop, and you can purchase these every week to get them on more than one character. So now that we've built up our damage dealers, let's now complete and round off our party by delegating at least one of our party members for buffs and debuffs. As such, these are some of the best skills to inherit for this role. Firstly, we'll always want one member with front boost, which gives a 10% damage buff for all members. Unfortunately, this only applies for physical damage. For magic-focused parties, back boost also doesn't really synergize well with Revenge Seeker, so I'll go over better alternatives in just a bit. Next, we have Formation of Vigor, and as I mentioned earlier, this skill buffs the party's attack by 2 stages. Definitely one of the strongest buffs in the game, not to mention you get this one pretty early on. Both Front Boost and Formation of Vigor can be inherited from the general archetype. For our defense debuffs, we use Rakunda and Vityarta from the Faker lineage, or Warcry and Peerless Warcry from the Berserker lineage if you want to go for AoE debuffs. The last inheritance slot is more of a flex if anything. For this one, I recommend Knight's Proclamation, Faker's Roguery, Tetrakarn, Makarakarn, Counter, and Magic Counter are all very nice utility skills. Alternatively, you could also go for some form of MP Sustain for this slot. Just to give some honorable mention, since I found that the best supports by far for getting unscathed battles go to Hulkenberg's Royal Knight archetype and also Heismay for simply being OP with his dodges. These guys mainly come in for the longer fights since they're able to disrupt enemy turns by either repelling, blocking, or dodging enemy attacks. Finally, let's go over some useful items that you can use in battle. By far, the strongest consumable item in the game is the Sublime Spoonful. The fact that this item isn't limited to 1 use per battle makes it so broken. This basically lets you overcome any sort of challenge in the game. You do have to cook every dish to unlock the recipe, but it's well worth the effort. Amber Stew and Enchanted Pottage also provide party-wide charge effects for physical and magic damage respectively. These are nice since you won't need to run Masked Dancer or need to waste an inheritance or accessory slot to use Concentrate and Hyper. Critical Meatballs is also nice for its party-wide crit rate buff. It's rather useful if you don't want to waste a slot for Adventurer's Curiosity. That said, I think that just about covers everything. Hope I was able to provide some useful info, and I will see you on the next one. Bye bye!